Well, good morning to you, Australia. Evening to you, North America. Dan Vaughan with you here on Talking Baseball Australia. Baseball's best mate, Paul Morgan, will be joining in a moment. A few minutes late. I'll tell a funny story here in a little bit because I think you guys will all get a kick out of it. Sometimes you get caught with your shirt off. Yeah, that happens sometimes. How about let's roll the open? Let's write the show open here in 3, 2, 1. Baseball's best mate is on the air on Talking Baseball Australia. Here we go.
It's Talking Baseball Australia. It's baseball updates you'll really love. The MLB and ABL news you want. With Paul Morgan and Dan Vaughan. It's baseball's best mate all year round. From the batter's box to the mound.
That's not really the way we draw it up. That's not probably the best open ever. It's probably one of the worst opens there. But hey, you know what? That's what happens. Let's bring my broadcast partner in crime in from the lovely West this morning. Good morning to him. Here he comes in 3, 2, 1. The greatness of Paul Morgan. Good morning to you. You'd think maybe I need some coffee because I'm all over the place this morning. How are you doing, mate?
Well, it's a beautiful spring day. Turned on. We got onto the show this morning. I've had you shirtless. I mean, it's all happening so far.
Yeah, but to pull the curtain back, okay, because we've actually got Cam Vale waiting in the wings. Cam and I talked a little over an hour and a half ago, and I wrapped the interview up, and I'm like, okay, I'll put it in the system, and I'm sitting here. I thought, you know what? Take the shirt off, relax a little bit. I got 2 hours. I'm watching baseball tonight over here or MLB Network. I'm reading some stories online about the ABL and just I'm all excited. All of a sudden in my ear, I hear this sound of a voice. I'm like, wait, Paul's there. He's actually online, right? He's there right there. And I kind of got caught literally with my shirt off. So you guys, you folks worldwide, you're very fortunate. Yes, I have dropped 64 pounds. I should probably convert that to kilos for you. That's good, but you still don't want to see me with my shirt off. That's what I'm saying. So, there's shows like this, and then there's shows like this, and this is the one we've all been waiting for. We always are excited when the fixture comes out. July-ish. We're all fired up. We spend a day celebrating, then we go into our dry dock until the season starts. But this is a different year. This is one we've been waiting on. Before we jump into Cam, I want to get your thoughts just initially on the whole cat caboodle here, the whole deal with this ABL scheduled, 2 conferences, basically 2 leagues playing at once. Your thoughts on that, mate?
Very interesting, interesting model. I don't know the ins and outs of how it all came about, but I mean, look, the Auckland hub makes sense. The Auckland hub with the Geelong Korea makes sense for those 2 teams to be over there. Of course, they've got the broadcast deal with Sky Sports. We know Geelong Korea have a enormous broadcast deal in Korea, which the numbers are astronomical. Actually, the amount of people in Korea who do tune into ABL games and Geelong Korea games. Adelaide and Brisbane, how they ended up in Auckland, I don't know. And I guess in the coming weeks, we'll try to get the Nathan Davidson on from the Adelaide Giants to sort of talk about how they ended up in Auckland as well. Perth, Melbourne, Canberra, Sydney, all playing each other as per normal. Right now, that can't possibly happen. Can it happen in 14 weeks? I would highly put an asterisk next to that and a big time question mark that could possibly happen. It'd be great if it did, but I think I don't know. Like you're relying on a lot of things, DV, to go right in the next 15 odd weeks for this thing to fly. And can anyone out there confidently go in 15 weeks' time life will be normal? Unlikely when most of the time here in the West anyway. Like the narrative generally is everyone's getting ready for potentially another wave of the virus in October, November. That's generally the consensus around local businesses and the community at large. So, look, it's great, and you and I take my hat off to the ABL for putting out a schedule, for saying this is what we're aiming for. We are putting something out there to aim towards. I think it's great to do that. Will it happen as it is? I would highly doubt it, but at the same time, it's great for everyone involved to kind of have something to aim for, I guess. Your thoughts, DV, before we go into
several, and as we wait for the Cam interview to load in there, by the way, questions and comments, I know you guys have a lot of them, and we will take those throughout the show. Basically, we left the show wide open today because there's a lot to talk about, and I want to give you guys a chance to fire away, so please, we will get to your questions and comments as well as I'll pull those up for you. Again, the show is Talking Baseball Australia Live. We're glad you're along. I've been through this before. I didn't realize that until this afternoon over here in the States, when I realized, okay, how do I react to this? What is this? I went through this very same thing with only one exception. In the American Association, where I work with the Kansas City T-Bones, we had a schedule come out back in November-ish, coming up for the May season. There's a lot of leeway in there for sales and marketing and tickets and what have you, memberships, whatever. But we went through this very same process after COVID hit. When COVID hit, everything went out the window. We went through the same process that's going through the ABL. So this is not necessarily, it's not new to me. And I feel the same feelings that I have when I saw the T-Bone schedule come out, which came out, I guess the season was supposed to start May 19th. We got a schedule around, actually was later in the lead up, was mid to late April, I believe, around April 20th. About a month out, we had a schedule of an updated schedule. They pushed it back to a July start, and then they had to come back again and pull 6 teams off June 1st, and only 6 teams wound up playing. So I've been through this plan, and basically my feeling is this is a plan. This is plan A. This is the one that they're hoping, if all things go correct, that means all the things we've talked about, travel restrictions, vaccines, things of that nature, loosening up, quarantine, whatever, that this is plan A, that hopefully the ultimate plan would be for it all to work out. Now, plan B could be something different. Plan C, get to plan D even. So that's my initial knee jerk. I really think that that's what we have to think about when we go through this whole process, knowing this is plan A. And it doesn't mean it won't work. It doesn't mean it will work. What it means is you've got to have something in place because Sydney, Perth, whoever, they want to sell memberships. They want to sell sponsorships. You want to try to get something going momentum-wise, and without a fixture, you can't do it. So if you want me to read this too, this is something I'm going to read after Cam's interview, but I'm going to do it now. I thought there was a couple of clubs, Adelaide and Sydney, did some really fine job of kind of promoting their view of what's going on. And Adam Dodd, I want to read just a little bit of what he said. This is from their website, but Adam Dodd, of course, the Sydney Blue Sox owner, and he gave a local perspective to their Blue Sox fans. This is Adam's quote: "We, the Blue Sox, have been in 100% playing mode for months now, with weekly planning sessions around strategies to fight COVID obstacles. We are confident that the season will go ahead. In what shape is still to be determined." And again, I think that message alone, that opening paragraph from Adam Dodd, is what really a lot of us are saying. This is all great on paper, and that's our plan. And I think this is Vale's plan. This is everyone's plan. But the ultimate curveball is still out there. And I think we all agree with that. And I thought it was really good to see, Sydney and also Adelaide as well. Adelaide, a team that's really affected, along with Brisbane, having only the one home fixture, one home schedule. They talk about that too. They gave a whole long, if you saw this, they go to the Adelaide Giants site. They had a whole long question and answer thing there. Initially, the things that really stood out to me were, and I'm going to pull it up on the screen for you. The things that stood out to me were obviously 7 innings, 9 innings. That's something that Cam's going to address in a moment. There's still the playoff format's not to be decided yet, although I will give you this. The American Association just today, now they've got 13 days left in their season. They just announced today that the top 2 teams, they've already announced that was going to be the playoff mode back in June, but the series will be a 7-game series opposed to a 5. My point is, this is all subject to change at any point. We could, at any moment, you can add or subtract something from this whole deal. And I think that flexibility is a key thing going forward.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you're going to have to stay fluid the whole. Like, look at Major League Baseball's even staying fluid the whole way through. Look, the biggest thing I think most people will note is we know why the 7-inning games happen in the international conference because of the broadcast deal that the Tuatara have. It is over 24 games. I mean, there's 48 innings less played. So there's a lot less innings played for the international guys over the Australian guys. As you know, Dan, changes the complexity of your bullpen, changes the complexity of the way you play. Like we know all that. That's an interesting point. Like, I mean, the bigger part is, like that, as you said, the Adelaide Giants got a home series. The Bandits in Auckland the whole time. Looking at the schedule today, I mean, I was surprised. There's a lot of activity around that. There's a lot of activity around a period of time that's typically people on holidays. Obviously, well, I know they're on holidays in general, but I'm talking. There's series starting on Boxing Day. There's series starting on New Year's Eve, going into New Year's Day. So this is a strange schedule for I guess for the team we're closest to, the Heat over here in the West. This is the 18th of December is when it's all said and ready to go against the Canberra Cavalry. But I was interested to see those Boxing Day schedules, those New Year's Day schedules, and whatnot. It's just it'd be the Australian conference is such an interesting one, and then of course I guess the big paragraph or the big point on the international one, DV, is the possible international team.
And again, and that's something we're going to talk about a little bit too with Cam. I think that's kind of, and I'm waiting for the interview to load. So give me a couple minutes. It's loading in the system. So I'm stalling for time here. So we're kind of reversing things. I know you guys are wanting. Yes, better if I got caught with my. Yes, you're right. My WD-40 chimes in there. But seeing things like there's Purr's announcement right there. I thought all the teams did a phenomenal job of getting the message out as well. At the worst case scenario, of course, you see the Heat when, here's the one for the Aces, the champions right there. At the worst case scenario, folks are talking about your game. I guess that's a good thing, regardless of where it goes. But I'm with you. I think, again, this is the whole this 9th team thing. And it makes sense because if this 9th team, let's just say this 9th team is a team from Japan, or this team is a team from Major League Baseball or from the minor leagues, but a Major League affiliate, if you got to buy yourself another 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks to make that fly, you've got a plan in place. The fans know there's going to be a bubble in Auckland. We know this. We know that. Now, would it be 4 teams, 5 teams? We don't know that for sure. It makes it a little tough maybe for the front office to sell tickets. But again, only team really selling tickets is with the Tuatara, and they're really selling tickets for everybody. So I guess if you're just buying time, it bodes well for a bubble. You already know the plan. It's just whether it's going to be 4 teams or 5 teams. I get the impression that they just want to buy time because it's one of those things you'd hate to get to, say, October 1 and say, oh, by the way, we could have had a 5th team if you would have given us 2 or 3 more weeks. I just need to buy that time, I think.
Well, you've got Auckland. Essentially, you've got that North Harbour Stadium ready to go. You can play there every day. You can add teams in. I mean, the biggest thing I think about that North Harbour Stadium and the biggest thing about the Auckland Tuatara, from what we're led to believe, again, we don't know for sure, but what we're led to believe, the Adelaide-Brisbane deal, there's the deal probably done for a national that those games will probably be carried across Fox in some description. For the Brisbane Adelaide guys, we know that the media centre over in Auckland is probably, the best in the country as it currently stands. Certainly, the deal is we'll have the guys from Geelong Career over there as well, who did such a great job filming their games last year as well. So look, you'd see that hub, and look, if you get one or two or some MLB teams over there, some minor league teams over in Auckland, I mean, really, you're playing for the fact that you've got broadcast rights back into the US. Auckland's a very friendly time zone, particularly to the west coast of North America as well. So there's a lot of bonuses, and there's a lot of ways. And look, Auckland's a beautiful place to be at that time of the year as well. Probably worldwide one of the, they've got a little bit of a flare up now with COVID, but worldwide one of the best places to be. So I do tend to think that there will be some international teams come in. I think it'll be completely different to what we think, but it'll be good. But look, it's as you said, DV. We're talking baseball at the moment. We of course saw Andy Kyle, our good mate Andy Kyle from Talking Baseball. He re-announced at the helm of the Heat, and
let's jump into that, because again I apologize. I was kind of stalling here because I had a situation. We got the interview. It's going to be great, but going to see Robert out there. Before we jump into Andy Kyle, there's one thing that came up after I did the interview, reading some of the fan posts, and I think it's something I don't think Cam could really answer, and I do ask him about financial implications, but there is some concern about what happens with some of the teams, not necessarily Perth and Melbourne, Sydney, but Adelaide and Brizzy. What happens to the members? Members are going to get 4 games as opposed to having a full season. I think there's some creativity out there being offered. I think some teams are trying to do some creative things. There'll be memorabilia, whether it be merch, whatever. You're going to have to be outside the box thinking, what are your thoughts on those teams and what they got to do to kind of appease those members?
Well, there's the opportunity as well. I know in WA anyway, I'm assuming it'd be the same right around the country. I know the state league starts, October. So there's an opportunity, I suppose, to put the Giants, the Australian guys and the Giants into the South Australian State League system, for October to December. So they're playing, they may be playing against other state league teams, but there is some presence there. I did see that there are guys, doing signed balls, signed bats, signed shirts. But you're right, even for Perth or Sydney or even Canberra. I mean, remember Canberra had a tough time last year with the bushfires, which we sort of, kind of forget that started this whole 2020 thing, where they lost the series as well. So I mean, they've only got 3 series as well. Perth have only got 3 series. Sydney and also Melbourne as well. So you're going to lose, or not going to lose, but you're not going to make as much money on ticket sales as you did the year before. So you're going to have to do a lot of things. And I think whether it's, Perth, I know, are doing a good job with their school clinics and holiday clinics, and maybe they extend that a bit more into the junior clinics. But it's going to have to be creativity plus, DV, because look, I think you've seen other sporting clubs in Australia anyway. You've seen a lot of smaller tier, like I talk about the local football teams, the WAFL, West Australian Football League teams. The AFL teams, of course, they've made no money throughout the season, a lot of them, because they're on tickets. But, they've done things like pledges, and they've got some, our good mate, Mike Keeley, he might be able to play a good role in the merch arena as well, where, like limited edition shirts. If you pledge $50, you get a certain Heat shirt or Blue Sox shirt or Canberra shirt or something along those lines. But you're right. You're just going to have to be different. You're going to have to find ways. I think baseball fans obviously love baseball. Sport fans love sport. And people are going to reach into the pocket and help keep this thing going in the right direction, DV.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Andy Kyle, a guy we mentioned a moment ago, this is kind of the headline of the week for folks out west. He's returning. I don't think this was a surprise, was it? I mean, if you're – I guess there's probably, if you would have said to me, all right, well, we knew Brook Knight was, because of the situation, his commitments back in the States, wasn't coming back. This would probably be the first name that comes to mind. All this guy did was lead a team to the postseason in his first year as a skipper. He's back. Good news out west. What this also is, and I think that people forget about this, is a bigger picture here. I had a chance to chat a little bit already with a couple of folks, and you got to remember that he also is the team manager of the under 18s national team. So, I'm sorry, under 21s. Wait, of the youth team, and being the manager of that club, he's being groomed as well, working with Team Australia at the national level as well. This is a big picture thing. Getting this guy, and the more managerial experience and the more quality managers you have, the better it is for the national team, whether the unders or the big team. This is a good thing, a big picture thing, but it really is a no-brainer, mate.
Agreed. And, like I think you see Tank over in the Adelaide Giants, see Alan D. San Miguel getting signed by the Melbourne Aces. You now see Andy Kyle back at the helm. And it's a good, as you say, DV, it's the next wave of Australian baseball. As Australia continues to grow as a country, it's the next wave. And look, Andy did a phenomenal job. And you and I both know he was great to us and great to work with. Probably the most, certainly hugely admired and respected by the players. Immediate buy-in by all the playing group as well. They all love Andy. He does, not only that, he also is a teacher instructor with Ken McGee, of course, who joins us in the broadcast at the Darling Rangers School, where he works on the baseball program there as well. So as you say, DV, heavily involved in junior baseball and the foundation, the growth to baseball at development level as well. And look, I think for Andy as well, and the Heat's affiliation with the Tampa Bay Rays as well, it's sort of he gets an opportunity to learn from those guys and vice versa. And great guy, and as we said, we're stoked for him, and lovely to see young Aussie managers on their rise in the ABL, DV.
Yeah, and Andy Kyle, all he did this first year was make the postseason. 2-year record, 50-30. First year he went 23-17. He came in after that took that young club that Matt Kennelly had. You remember the Heat the year before just kind of took it in the chin and said, "Here are the young guys," and Andy took that next step. He knows those guys, and you won't find a better ambassador for the game. And really, I one of the things I'll tell you personally is I love talking to the guy just about life in general. He's a really good, real good mate. And he's just one of those kind of guys you just pull for, and it's good news there. Other news, too, to pass along. I know how much you guys saw this. There's the fact that one of my favorite players of all time in the ABL, and a guy I've gotten a chance to know fairly well, Josh Tolles, is back in the league as well. He and Darryl George are back with the Aces, the champs. The champs get some more depth right there, but a couple of guys, and I remember a young Darryl George, year one for us, I believe, year one for us on the air, joining us on the Talking Baseball Australia radio show back in the day. George is back. Josh Tolles is back. Just more depth for the Aces, who just keep getting they seem to just keep acquiring talent.
Yeah, another two quality guys for Team Australia as well. Josh Tolles is, I'm with you, DV. Such a huge fan of what he can do, and with his time with the Adelaide Bite at that point in time, his time with the Aces as well. He's and such a good guy as well. Another like a quality signing, and that would be tough to beat because they've got a couple of holes to fill. Of course, they've got Alan D. San Miguel now on the top step, not behind the plate. They've got Luke Hughes. Of course, retired as well, and Peter Moylan, who was in there for a little while, retired as well. Not sure what will happen, of course, with the power hitting Delman Young either. But they could be interesting. But there's what I love about this time of the year, DV, as well, is there's always those. Of course, we heard the Manny Ramirez and these kind of rumors circulating around where he may land, possibly not in the international conference if you believe certain what you hear. You may well be in that Australian conference. Not necessarily saying he will be in that team on the screen, but maybe on a team on that side of Australia. But they, I love the fact that Darryl George and Josh Tolles are back. I mean, it feels more like summer when you start to hear these names, DV, or winter for North America.
And one more item I want to pass along to you too, and I went through this, and it's a little thing, but there was some, I don't know, maybe a little confusion though. But what the Aces did do is they didn't rebrand. I want to use that word, rebrand. They actually kind of updated what they're doing. They just tweaked their logo a tad, tweaked their colors a little bit. I don't know how much you can see on the screen, but I'll put this up for the fans to see. And there you get only put that down here. You can kind of lower this. You guys can get a little better view of that. But if you look closely, they tweaked a little bit their logo and their color scheme. Not a lot, but again, I mentioned this because the T-Bones do the very same thing. We tweaked our red from a more of a maroon red to a more of a cherry red, and added a blue. This is more just a slight change of the color. I'll put the color up on the screen as well. See the logo. Actually, I'm going to put this on the full screen for you, everybody, to see real quick, Paul. But there it is right there. You can see the slight tweak of the logo there, just a tad. And I'll bring this down too so you guys can see the bottom of the plane. It's hard to tell the plane there. And then a slight little change there. And then I'm going to bring the colors up. Let you guys see the color scheme for him. But the Aces pulled this new color scheme up as well. I don't know if you guys can see this, but there it is. Slightly different blue, not by much, but it's just a little twinge, or what do you want to call a little tweak, let's call it, of the color scheme there. And that's what they've got going on. So a little bit of that. That's a kind of rebranding news. I thought the Aces did a great job, partner, of putting that on social media. In this day and age, when you control your own message, I think it's very big that you could do things like that. And I thought what they did, kind of unveiling that, was a pretty cool deal. Just unveiling that. But I mean, you can't, it's not a huge change, but it's enough to say, hey, let's roll with it. I like it. What do you think about that?
Well, it's like you look at the red in particular, like the difference in the color of the red that they're doing, and it is purely like because and again, if we had Mike on from Garment Exchange, he'd explain it better. But I mean, those colors are going to pop better on hats. They're going to pop better on. They're going to be more sun resistant than all these all this jazz as well as when you're doing your videos as well, or you're doing your printing magazines. As things change as heat printing and stuff changes as well, like those logos are just going to pop more, and that's what you want. You want the eye to naturally go to. That's the point of changing it to those things. So as you design your caps, your hats, your shirts, they just look better. They look fresher. They look, that sort of old red has that habit to kind of fade pretty easily. So it's a really like it's a small thing, DV, but it's a huge thing at the same time, because it's also like testament to teams thinking that way as well, thinking like what's going to make our brand look better, which maybe not have happened that much in the past, but I love it. Spending a lot of my day in brands, I love the fact that they're thinking of it.
Well, let's jump the MLB real quick before we get to Cam here in just a moment. But a guy that continues to do what he does, Liam Hendriks, boy, I'll tell you, this guy has allowed the one earned run in forever. He got a save last night against the Rangers in the States. Got a win over the weekend against the Halos, his second win of the season. And Liam just rounding into one of the top reliever. He threw 98 miles an hour last night on the gun, consistently hitting 98, 98, 98. About as consistent on the radar gun as you can see. We talked about his demeanor, all that he brings to the table. I even saw some mentions of a possible Cy Young candidate in a shortened season. A reliever perhaps could be that kind of guy. He's been that good a reliever. His numbers, partner, of course, 4 innings this week, 1 hit allowed, 20 let's see here, a win on the 23rd against the Halos for the season. Now, this is not a 1 month sample size. This is actually, this is now 16 ball games, 16 and a third innings, 2-0, 1.10 earned run average, pardon me, Liam, only 6 hits in 16 and a third innings, only 3 walks, which that was a huge problem for him before. As a starter was the walk problem. 23 strikeouts in 16 and a third. His velo's up, his movement's there. Gosh dang it. Every time I see him come out of that bullpen, even though I'm not an A's fan, dang it, I'm fired up and I'm proud.
Yeah, I know. We've got to get him on the show, DV, because he is an absolute stud at the moment. And I saw, I don't know if it was MLB Network or ESPN, one of the two put together their all-star team. Obviously no all-star break this year, but they put through their all-star team. Liam Hendriks was mentioned, of course, in the American League all-star team in that bunch. So he's having a phenomenal season and just gets better and better. And we mentioned on the show a couple of weeks ago when he was interviewed, he doesn't like the isolation doesn't mind him because he doesn't really like being around people that much anyhow. Maybe he doesn't like fans in the stands as well. I don't know, but he's doing a phenomenal job. And that word again that you just said, Dan, he's doing the country so proud as well. And like he really is, there's a big difference between, I guess, making it to the big leagues, but then, like Graham Lloyd won a couple of World Series as an Australian as well. And getting to the level Liam's getting to. And as you say, Dan, like he's nearly the best in the business at the moment.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean,
We'll take strike
you're not
three,
talking
call
about. This
on
is
the
not a
inside
guy.
corner, 98 miles an
There were
hour.
times back. Let's say I'm trying to
1-2
think of
pitch.
somebody. Well, maybe I'll use Liam.
Fastball swing.
Early in his career, when he was with the Twins, I would see him pitch and start. I would catch a game, and I'd be the only one really watching the games because I was watching Liam. I wouldn't watch the Twins unless Liam was pitching. He was kind of a fringe player. I knew him because he was from Australia. He was a Perth guy. But he's no longer just a fringe. You know, he was a guy. Oh, by the way, there's one Australian playing the big leagues. No, it's, oh, by the way, this guy's a star. And he happens to be from Australia as well. His story has become a star. He's a star now. This is not a guy on the fringe. He is a flat-out big league star.
He absolutely is. And boy, that play is pretty nice.
So that is how the game is going to end.
For a minute, the bare hander on third base is pretty plays.
Yeah, anytime you do a bear paw like that, yeah.
He is a genuine star right now. And I really hope that, you know, he starts getting the attention in Australia that he deserves. And we talk about this often that, you know, Ben Simmons, obviously another Australian guy, gets, well, not so much now the Sixers are out. Like, he gets, you know, a lot of media coverage in comparison to Liam Hendricks, who, to be fair, I mean, probably Liam Hendricks is as good as Ben Simmons is at basketball. So, I mean, there's a pretty good comparison there now. And, you know, like, it'd be nice, granted the NBA obviously has a little bit more power here than MLB, but, you know, like, people need to be talking about Liam Hendricks a lot more. He needs to be getting a lot more attention from Australia, and baseball needs to be getting a lot more attention because of it as well. And, boy, he's an ambassador, DV, and he's doing a great job. Before I bring Cam on, your thoughts. I wasn't going to say much about this, but I can't not mention it because going on behind me, nothing but highlights. In case you missed it in the States, there was a police shooting of a black man in Kenosha, Wisconsin. The NBA canceled their game. They all walked out last night, didn't play their playoff games last night or tonight. They're going to play going forward. Major League Baseball went dark tonight too. The Rangers and Athletics were supposed to be playing, and they're not. I'm interested to see, because it's more of a North American problem, but I'm interested. My question to you, and I told this to some folks today on my broadcast this afternoon, what Australia has done, especially in footy, with the recognizing indigenous people of Australia. There's a place for sport and social justice. I think what Australia has done has been phenomenal. Do you think that North America could borrow a page from what they've done in Australia to make things right, sport-wise? Yeah, look, I think, first of all, I think Australia's still got an enormous way to go to sort of, you know, like, quite often, probably, to be fair, Australia probably flies under the radar while America gets all the attention. Australia probably flies under the radar, but, you know, in its own right, we still have a significantly, you know, huge problem with the same treatment of Indigenous Australians from the police force and from various things. So, you know, they talk about closing the gap a lot in Australia about, you know, from an education point of view, from an opportunity point of view. And Australia still has an enormous way to go. You know, I think the Indigenous rounds and all, you know, what they do is great for the culture. I think, like, it all starts, you know, and interesting to see. My youngest is in kindergarten at the moment. They have a NAIDOC week, which is where they start. So they've really made a concerted effort to sort of talk more about understanding the Aboriginal community and also the languages and whatnot. And my young guy who's 4 years old is fascinated in Aboriginal culture, you know, based off the stories and that he gets told. And I think, you know, like, it has to be there. Has to be a generational change for all of it. Look, in the for me right now, I take my hat off to Major League Baseball and other sports for doing what they're doing. You know, like, I think for me, like, you know, a white person in Australia, like, it's hard to sometimes, you know, having spent a lot of time in the US, but the reality is, like, people spend their lives not, you know, like, the police are there to protect you. And, you know, like, there are a group of people in the US and a race of people who, like, genuinely feel like they may well get shot if they get pulled over by cops. They may well get shot, and, you know, that's not a world to live in, and that's not a society that we should strive to be. So, you know, good on the sports for taking time to pause to sort of, you know, allow the conversations to happen that need to happen. I mean, a lot of people are not happy about it, but at the end of the day, change needs to happen, Dan, and we know it we know from when we were younger to now. Like, well, the world is totally different, and it's just time for a reset, time for change. And look, doing things like learning. I think baseball has opportunity. The Negro League should do a round on that, where everyone changes their uniforms to the way it was, like the Cleveland Spiders and all that sort of jazz. I think that's what the first and most logical thing baseball could do.
Yeah, and I'll tell you guys, if you've never been to the Kansas City area, and you are in Kansas City, and you're in Australia, and you're ever in North America, I encourage you to go to the Negro Baseball League Museum and Hall of Fame in Kansas City. Phenomenal experience. I think I ranked for Cooperstown's a great experience, and so is this place. If they could combine the two, I think that'd be great. Finally, I stalled it up to get everything going. We're ready to go. I'm going to apologize, you guys. We should have the interview off the top of the show.
We got it at the bottom of the show. It's all right.
I dropped the ball. We're gonna go the extra innings here. Cam Vale, nice to join me a little announcement about 2 hours ago, but got to roll that video here as we and I do have one little surprise. Hopefully Paul can see it after we get back. But bring this up for you guys real quickly here. And go ahead and roll it. And this is Cam Vale, CEO of Baseball Australia, and here on Baseball's Best Mate, right here on Talking Baseball Australia Live on a Friday. Let's roll it. Talking Baseball Australia Live continues. Dan Vaughan with you, and as promised, his second return, and this time with a lot more in his bag, is CEO of Baseball Australia, Cam Vale. Cam, good morning to you. You've been a busy man this week. Busy man. How you feeling about this whole fixture being out?
Good. There's a weird sense of relief to start going public with a lot of the discussions and obviously the direction that we talked about, a couple of weeks ago. I haven't shaved since then. That's how difficult it's been. But it's it's good to get it out there. Long way to go. A lot of debate. A lot of I'm sure there's going to be a lot of mixed feelings out there, but which is fine. I think that's great. What I said in an interview actually yesterday was that it's really important that we give people a sense of hope and direction. And now let's try and make this season happen, because that's the most important thing. And we can't just keep it behind closed doors and hope for everything to be perfect in November and then tell people what we're doing. So it's a lot to talk about, and more than happy to jump on and have another chat with you.
Well, at the worst case scenario, folks are talking about baseball in Australia. That's if that's the worst thing that happens, I guess that's a plus. It's been like that. I don't recall any time, and I guess it's because of the pandemic. The schedule usually comes out. We're all, it's out, and we go back about our business for another 4 or 5 months. But this one's a little different. This seems like a lot of anticipation, a lot of energy. I think that's a plus from the top.
Yeah, when we announce a structure and you've got essentially two competitions that are slightly different, as in, there's different set of rules that I'm sure we'll talk about, that it's going to create a level of interest, even with non-baseball people, or people that aren't aware of the ABL, to go, oh, well, how does that work? How do you make that happen? And I think one of the really interesting part, I believe a lot, your opportunity mirrors your challenge. If you've got a challenging environment, the opportunity will be linked to it in how you're going to solve that. In this COVID-19 period, there's the extremes for a sport like us. It's almost at both ends. So there's a lot of skepticism that we can even get an ABL season, and I accept that. Like that, we've worked through that. Trust me, myself and the teams. This has been a big challenge to go, hey, is even playing the right thing? Should we call an audible and get in front of it and cancel, versus the opportunity that goes, but geez, if we play, what can we do? When can you do something like this that's so different? And I think, and hopefully most people will accept, even if you don't agree with it, that if you are going to try something different, now is the time to do so, to get to the other side, no matter what. So if it doesn't work, you obviously pivot back to where you were. If parts of it do, you take that forward. And I think that's what's exciting. If we can you know, again, there's still the big ifs, but we might as well go, this is our intent. This is what we're trying to do. And this is what we want to do. And hey, it's people like me and others. We've got to try and make it happen now.
Right.
That's what the job of leaders is. You've got to put yourself out there.
All right, first thing off the top, this whole plan, this whole thing that we're going to go through, it all hinges basically on a couple of items. Things getting better, opening up, whatever you want to call it, travel restrictions, all the things that are in this current 2020 bubble we're in, this whole whatever you want to call it. That's the first key. This is all great on paper, but it all hinges on that opening up, correct?
Yeah, so the dominoes really start to be domestically. It's possible if state borders are closed, but geez, it's very, very difficult to do so. So for Australia as a country to settle into a COVID-19 normal, and that might still mean there's restrictions on crowds, or there might be things in place that hinder us but still allow us to play. And obviously the next domino is the international border aspect, to not only have players coming in. We might have talked about last time, we've got a whole team, Geelong Korea, that needs to enter a country, Australia, or our planning at the moment around New Zealand. So those are still important. What we've decided is, well, we can't hide behind that or wait for that. We have to set up a plan. But you're right, there's still, and the government regulations around this are at the moment probably unplayable for us as they stand today. Right. But this is where sports like us and others, and I'm talking to a lot of my counterparts as well, as to, well, how can we present a compelling case to government that protects the community, but shows how sports are coming through this? Because nearly all the summer sports in Australia are international sports. There are no, netball, Australian rules, and I know rugby league has an international profile of some degree. But if you say AFL, rugby league, and netball are largely domestic sports with an international profile, everything else we're international sports. So whether it's players, broadcast interest, any involvement connects us to international partners. And I think, one of the hopes as we talk to government and officials is, well, we have to get through the other side. So are we part of the recovery? Can a sport like baseball and the ABL be part of the recovery phase that maybe, and position ourselves differently to those authorities, again, providing we can prove a safe environment.
The American Association Independent League in the States went through sort of a very similar thing. Of course, Major League Baseball had a fixture in place, had a schedule in place when COVID hit. The American Association also had a schedule in place, but knew months in advance they had to kind of an audible plan A, B, C, and they actually had. And what I'm trying to do is walk fans through what I think your planning is. There's plans A, B, and C. Currently, the plan is this is it. But as I saw in the American Association, which went through this back in May and June, plan A could turn to plan B, maybe plan C, because I know you're committed to playing, but there are always room for shifting as we go forward.
100%. And I think you summed it up well. This really is the plan A that we've settled on at this point in time. And again, our intent is to deliver it. Depending on what happens means that we may have to pivot in big directions. So, the best example is the intent around the Auckland hub is above the line. We've been very public with it. We've got a lot to do to make that happen. And clearly, if that doesn't happen, well, we have to have a plan B and C, or even subtle variations of plan A that could come into play that are going to be important. And Geelong Korea, as we've said, still have their own direct international border challenges to work through. But as I said, I think there's only so much you can do, I believe, behind the scenes. And I think a couple of sports in this country are not being as transparent as they need to. And in fact, the ABL team owners, we were probably wanting to go, even earlier than this. And it's trying to find that sweet spot to go. Now's the time. I don't think we can go much later with declaring our intent. But yeah, I'll have no issues if I have to, in 6 weeks say, look, sorry, we're doing this now slightly differently, and here's the direction. I think now the key becomes the communication of that as those things occur.
Gotcha. Dan Vaughan with you and Talking Baseball Australia Live, along with Cam Vale, CEO of Baseball Australia. Let's dive in sort of to the nuts and bolts of this thing and the way it sits right now. First off, this is one of the big things I've seen online. the 7 versus 9 inning thing, competition wise. I'm a baseball purist. Don't like 7 innings. That's just me. I get why you're doing it. More details and maybe why that had to be. I know it's mostly due to television situation, correct?
Yeah, look, there's and again, this is one I'm very comfortable. Is a very debatable piece, and you know, people like yourself, that view is potentially 100% correct, right? Like that's there's nothing wrong with that. We've certainly had a lot of internal debate and discussion, and there's a lot of strong advocates for both 9 and 7 innings, and even as a league, we've clearly compromised or had 7 and 9 innings in play, right? So you might have, you know, Canberra model has traditionally been to play single games Thursday to Sunday, all
Right.
9 innings. You know, when teams play on a weekend, they're playing 1 7 innings game, 1 9 innings. So for us, it's certainly, there's been a push internally to go, look, for the sport in the country here, we need to present a stronger product to broadcast partners and look at changes. So that's a key driver, without doubt. But even some of our, and I won't name them, but some of the very senior people, very experienced in baseball, are strong advocates to go, the ABL model needs to adapt to a 7 innings piece. And there's considerations around cost, there's considerations around what happens if international players are restricted. So what happened really, and again, even internally with our ABL teams, there's pretty strong debate. So we've effectively got 4 teams in each that are prepared to run with the 9 innings model in one conference, 7 in the other. And again, in a normal world, you wouldn't say, you know, you pick your choice. You go, hey, we've debated it. This is the direction. We feel this is the chance to go, you know what, they can run parallel. They are different. Still baseball. It's still going to be, you know, the rules between the two. And who knows, a little bit of anticipation when these 2 conferences finally clash in the ABL Championship Series.
And that was my next question. Do you foresee 7 or 9 in the postseason? I know there's several postseason scenarios in play, but specifically the innings thing, would you figure 7 or 9 innings depending on the scenario? How's that going to work?
Yeah, look, I don't want to be too politically correct and do the politician line. We are still working through what that would look like. And look, I think one of the logical answers to it will be if there's a ranking system between the conference winners, that if they play, you know, away, home under the typical model, where the second ranked team, will they play to that particular conference's rules? So I think that's one of the options. The other is to select, obviously, well in advance that what's the path. It's either going to be 7 or 9. So I think with the finals, one of the key things, I'll be very clear with any of the listeners, for you and your group, is that the finals is something that we have time to make decisions because of what we talked about earlier. If Plan A has to shift to a different direction, it does potentially impact on finals. And one of the great questions I had during this week was around, well, what happens if you get your 2 conferences off, but the border restrictions kick back in, and you effectively can't get, you know, the second ranked team or you can't get the teams across to each location. So I think for finals, we will make those decisions as we go. Well, certainly before the start of the season, and maybe soon. Like, we might be able to make a decision on this quite quickly. But with so much work and priority gets into the regular season, finals we've got time to work through. Provided, as I said, you don't make these calls halfway through, unless you are forced to because your situation has changed so dramatically.
He's Cam Vale, CEO of Baseball Australia. I'm Dan Vaughan. Here we're talking Baseball Australia Live here on this Friday morning edition. The delay of the bubble over in Auckland is, at least the story, at least what I'm reading, is because of this potential 9th team. How close is that? Is this close? Is this a weeks off? Or, I mean, how hot is this story?
Well, it's a pretty big story, and to give everyone a bit of an insight, even last weekend, I probably felt it was worth ruling a line through, and we press ahead. Monday, a few things change. You go, you know what? We need to put it out there that it's a possibility. It is still less likely to occur than likely, but the interest has been so high from so many different quarters. I just want to give it a little bit longer to go. I didn't want it to then delay the rest of all the announcements to tell everyone, well, we're going to push the announcements into September because of this one factor. Right. But the interest is real. The chances, because of everything we're working through, are difficult. It is, because of the way we're running the conferences and there's no conference versus conference play, to slot a fifth team, the ninth overall, but a fifth into one conference does work relatively seamlessly if they're based in that one location. So look, my best guess at the moment is by sort of mid-September, if that isn't pretty close to being secured, then we will press ahead as are, and we may still press ahead to go. You know, we can give a lot of direction on what that conference looks like. Again, we're still working through with the authorities in New Zealand, and that's a big part of the next sort of 8 weeks is to get the timing right to present the best possible case to how this Auckland hub can work with all sorts of logistics around it. And therefore this extra team, it's viable as an option. I want to keep it alive. I want to be transparent with it, and I'll have no problems if it doesn't work explaining, you know, the timing wasn't right. But why shoot yourself in the foot when it's a possibility that it can occur, and you just need to buy some more time, but don't hide behind, hey, we're going to delay the whole schedule for another month while we work through one issue.
Cam, as far as the roster rules, are they going to be the same as has been the past? Now, not to go into a long story about it now, but there's a point system, and you don't have so many imports. You got so many development players. Because of this whole pandemic deal, this whole different situation, will the roster rules be any different than they've been in years past?
Yeah, look, the intent is to keep the roster, certainly the point system and the salary cap, which are key planks, obviously, through our competition in place. So, you know, they'll be consistent across the conferences. I think that's very important. The playing rule is when you've got teams potentially playing 6 games in 6 days versus, you know, 4 in 4 days, we will look at. And again, this is probably part of the thinking is to minimise some of the challenges we've got this year by the teams being in effectively 2 separate conferences and playing like that throughout. It does mean if tinkering needs to occur in one, provided it's just isolated to the conditions in play for that conference, that we would have to look at. And it's possible this will come up in season, you know, and without, you know, scaring people. If the Australian conference had a disruption and we lost a series, but we were looking to reschedule it, then there's all sorts of things that might have to come into play to go, well, hey, now that there's going to be 8 games in 6 days and we're going to have to rethink how we do this. Certainly the rules around the players is important to protect their health and to ensure a fairness across the board. And I think, again, we all want conference versus conference play back. That's a given. And in any future model, you know, we certainly want to look at that. But it does mean, you know, there may have to be some subtle changes, but the consistency of the core planks through our competition, you know, salary cap and points, they have to be consistent across both conferences.
Perhaps say expanded rosters even. I know the Major League Baseball did that. Is that a possibility to have him carrying more on your roster?
Yeah, that's definitely one of those possibilities that we start working through. So in a sense now we sort of go into the conference mode for you know, each of the 4 teams in each conference and start working through some of these issues that are now potentially in play. As I said, I can't even see a scenario at the start of the season, as positive as everything could be, that we still don't have some contingencies to go, hey, if this happens, we'll do this. And the more you can do that up front, the better. I mean, we had, you know, a series last year lost because of the bushfires, and that caused, you know, immediate challenges to how do you replace that? What happens if the series hasn't been played? You know, so integrity in your competition, you obviously strive to keep that as close to as perfect as you can get it. A pandemic is probably the one time it slightly does get challenged, but you commercially and other things, you adapt and you do different things. But the integrity of the winning and losing, you want to keep as close to 100% as you can get.
You're watching Talking Baseball Australia Live. Dan Vaughan with you, along with the CEO of Baseball Australia, Cam Vale. Cam, the ABL structure and how the clubs are run, there's not a lot of room for error as far as profit and loss, things of that nature. We're looking for new sponsors. I know the league is always working hard. It's a real hard thing that we're all doing, trying to promote our league. Is there concern financially for the franchises that are not able to play home games? I mean, I think of like a Brisbane who draws well, or Adelaide who's got some momentum from a playoff appearance. Is there concern for those teams, especially not playing any home games or maybe the one series? How do those teams make money? How are they going to be able to stay afloat not playing their home grounds?
Yeah, and look, it's a great question, and certainly for all the team owners, not only do they have different baseball circumstances to manage, each of them are in their own different business world, if you like,
right,
that their own businesses are being affected differently. So this is probably one of the hardest ones to work through, and certainly for the Australian Conference, we've tried to protect as many of those home games as we think is possible, and playing into January has been a big part of that because that has traditionally been that best opportunity. So that group, and we need to work with them, with their sponsors and other things to go, well, how creative can we be? What else do we have to do to provide as much indirect support as we can to go, this isn't the AFL, we don't write the big checks to prop people up. So it is, I hate using these words, nimble and agile, but it is trying to go, all right, well, if you've got a partner, what can we do differently now to support you? With Adelaide, Brisbane and Geelong Career. And Geelong Career is slightly different because the broadcast is so important, but still affected by not playing in Geelong. Like, this is a setback for us in developing the partnerships we'd had in Geelong. But to Adelaide and Brisbane, Shane Smallcombe at Adelaide Giants and Mark Reedy at Brisbane Bandits have been incredibly supportive to go, hey, we made a decision to play. We're now going to support you as best as possible, Baseball Australia, to make this happen. Here's where we see some benefits in playing. And so for them, the broadcast model becomes quite important, as much in the short term as the long term. But we, as a league, need to then work through, you've actually given up, there's 4 home series lost. But if we had stuck to the model of the Australian Conference, well, you're at least down 2. How do we support you? How do we provide something different? And they're both being very creative in coming up with solutions, which is great. That's what we need in this environment, is to go, it's tough for everybody. We can all just have our head down and go, it's too hard. And we're dealing with sport. Sport is a manageable problem in COVID-19. Having COVID-19, all the issues that come through health and people losing their job, they're the big issues. So I give a lot of credit to the management at Adelaide and Brisbane that have supported this direction to go, we're going to do it. Let's do something different. Let's try and set up some outcomes for the future, that it's not that the hub will be the model for the future, but maybe it gives us some wins and some learnings to go, well, maybe that model can be part of the solution in the future. Maybe and the old argument of less is more. Maybe it's that higher quality home content that we're going to see some outcomes to go. I'd love to see ballparks that are full rather than half-empty ballpark spread over a long series. That's a simplistic answer, and I get that's still not the answer. But it's trying to look at, what if a few of these teams do get sellouts because less is more, and because we can market the sport better and promote it? And it's like, all right, well, what have we learned from that to take forward? I think that's one of the big reasons for the teams to play on and commit to playing, is the fact not only get through, and I'm going to start using this a fair bit, it's the survive and thrive model. How do we survive, but not just to limp into the next season? It's to, how do we get into the next season absolutely all guns blazing?
You mentioned a moment ago the broadcast thing too, and I'll use Adelaide because this question was sent to me via email. It must make it a very imperative that there's a broadcast revenue of some sort for a team like Adelaide, only playing 4 home games. Some kind of broadcast income is going to be huge for the Adelaides and Brisbanes who aren't having those home grounds. So I take it that's a big priority right now for the league.
Yeah, it's certainly a priority, and the dominoes around that become, the broadcast firstly to commit to, so that the assets that they've got as a team as well can be given the best chance to be maximised. And sponsorship's the key one, right? If you've got a platform that you can say, we're potentially reaching out to these different audiences and internationally, I think helps on the sponsorship position. And no doubt, look, this is the opportunity for if we can make this work, is to get the broadcast model right, that the games are at a decent enough level, that there is a broadcast platform and potentially broadcast revenue. So, but like, again, anyone wanting a certainty at the moment is certainly living in the wrong environment. But the intent absolutely is to go, well, what can this lead to again in the short term to survive and get through this season? But longer term to go, hey, if this works, then we're in under a model that can show broadcast is considerable for the future. And not all the teams agree. And this has been interesting to sort of manage through that. It's okay to have different opinions at the moment, to go, you know what, the model is more that minor league, bums on seats, broadcast, don't worry about that. That's an add-on, versus others that go, no, we want that to be, the fundamental platform for this season and beyond. So a lot of the reasons to having these two different structures is there's almost two different commercial models that start to underpin it.
Gotcha.
But you want both. You still want to get the combination at some point to be across both. Broadcast might not be critical to some, but you still want to have it as part of the model as over time. Vice versa, playing at home, having a presence at home is important. Geelong Career is the best example of that. Okay, they live 90% on the broadcast model,
right?
But developing baseball in Geelong, a fan base to support the team is important. They can manage without it this season is where we're at too.
Let's talk about imports quickly here too, as we're talking to Cam Vale, CEO of Baseball Australia, here on Talking Baseball Australia Live on a Friday morning. All right, let's just say that this plan's going forward and the border restrictions start to lift, let's say November, tail end of November, early December. How do you convince an import, whether it be affiliated, whether it be minor leaguer with the Dodgers or whoever, to come over for 14-day quarantine during the holidays, spending Christmas or maybe the days before Christmas, locked them in a hotel room? Is that a tough sell?
It's certainly a tough sell at the moment, and I think the interest again is so high. I think a lot are committed to the worst case scenario still. That if that means that they can still play and be part of the competition, and for their playing purposes, right? They're not necessarily going to be doing it for financial reasons, but for playing purposes in their career. I think a number of players are still committed internationally, that if that's the case, so be it. Part of my challenge and my opportunity is to try to present as best case as possible to Australian and New Zealand authorities to have some, the right word's not relaxation of that, but to have some conditions inside of that could be the ability to play and train, but be very restricted during that period to simply that outcome. So, no, you're not going to be wandering the streets and enjoying life in one of these two beautiful places, but for the first couple of weeks. So I think, a lot of that, again, talking to other colleagues in other sports, it's more about what can you do during that quarantine period. And one of the advantages potentially we have as baseball, and potentially in what we're looking at in Auckland, but also through the Australian Conference, is, baseball being played pretty regularly. If you're playing 6 games in 7 days, then, a lot of baseballers are used to hotel, training, playing, restricted movement. And I think if that was the sacrifice, I think there'd be a real willingness for teams and players to do so. Australian players is one of the great challenges as well, and they can't be forgotten in all of this, because if there's interstate borders, that it's going to make that almost impossible. We can't expect people to quarantine in a state for 2 weeks, giving up. And as we know, a lot of these our athletes are still working. So the unrestricted movement inside Australia is going to be very important. And we also accept that for some players in the Auckland hub or the hub if it's somewhere else, not if it's not in Auckland, might mean that for Adelaide, Brisbane, and even Auckland, that they will have to manage players to the normal. Hey, they're not available on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So the said players already sacrificed a lot to play to a Thursday, Sunday schedule. That it may be a very difficult challenge for some of our players this season.
And I get the feeling, Cam, that you're sympathetic to the fact that player A, who works Monday through Thursday and has the weekend off to play ball and travel if he has to, you're sympathetic to that situation. It sounds like you guys are willing to be flexible, whether it be rosters, how many Australians you carry, because that obviously is one of the biggest questions people have. How do players who have full-time jobs able to travel to a hub and be gone for 2 or 3 weeks? That's a big sympathetic thing. I think I get the feeling you guys have a plan, or at least are willing to be flexible there.
Oh, we have to be. I mean, a lot of those athletes too are a key part of our national team, and there's still an Olympic scheduled for next year, and we've got a qualifier still planned for late March. So the ABL is a huge part of that, and these players already sacrifice an enormous amount to support the ABL. I mean, it's one of the if I had the magic wand, if they give you a wand when you start these jobs, and I had 6 months into the workout, where am I going to wave it? It would be to support our Australian players better, right? Like sure. I reckon I'll back my skill to work through broadcasting and commercial models and all the other stuff that I think that we know we can find a way forward. The biggest challenge is certainly how much our Australian players sacrifice to be part of the ABL and to represent their national team. That's where I'd love that magic wand. Unfortunately, it's where we're at as a competition, and we have to look at the flexibility. And I think what I've enjoyed through this process, if there's been something to enjoy, is a lot of our team owners have been so willing to have probably discussions that we would have struggled to have pre-COVID-19. There's a winning and losing mentality, and I get that. This is a competitive environment, but everyone's now sort of, hey, how do we help each other get through this? Because we are only as strong as our weakest link. Sure. And again, national players in our competition is fundamental. As much as we talk a lot about MLB and international players in Asia and the like, there's no ABL without the domestic players and the high caliber players we have.
Final thing, I get the feeling you're pretty confident. I mean, we know you're going to play ball. We talked about that last time. You would be making plans if you didn't feel as a league that the government is going to make some kind of adjustments. Is that the confidence you're going forward with?
I'm typically a glass half full, opportunistic, commercial, confident person. So I tend to back myself in. I don't get them all right. So look, I suppose I've got a real passion that the ABL is going to be very successful. I'm just, ever since I've got into this role, it didn't take long. In fact, I took the role because I thought it could be successful. So I still believe all of that, and I still believe that now. So a lot of it is my own confidence and my own desire to have this ABL so successful in this country. So there's an internal and belief that's based on fact and some really good strategy. And there's a bit that is also based on almost that intangible, because it is, I don't want to undersell the difficulty. And at this point in time with governments, they rightfully have all the responsibility that if you can't present the best plan, then unfortunately it is potentially that roadblock that we say can't get past. But I am confident because there's such a willingness to want this to happen at all levels, but my own internal and personal belief. And again, anyone saying that we shouldn't be playing 7 innings, it should be 9 innings, I respect that. I don't dismiss that at all. What we're trying to do is to go, I want you to have an ABL this season, and just driving me day in and day out is the fact that I reckon we're on the cusp of the ABL being very successful in the next couple of years, and therefore, hey, I've got a committed group that want to play. Let's make it happen, and let's set this up for the future, that we might be one of the sports in 12 months that has surprised people because we've come out of it better rather than wounded and damaged throughout. So your question, I am confident. It's still no certainty, but hey, you see how the business, more people have got to put their necks on the line and go, we're going to make stuff happen. And if we don't, hey, we at least tried and we did the best we possibly could.
Cam, appreciate you putting your neck on the line. Appreciate your time as well for joining us on Talking Baseball Australia, and best to you, mate.
But let's hope I'm more confident I've had a shave next time and can be a little bit more presentable. That will be a sign to everyone on the next time I jump on one of these calls with you.
Appreciate it. That's Cam Vale, the CEO of Baseball Australia, here on Talking Baseball Australia Live. Dan Vaughan back with you. Paul will be back with us in a moment as well. I think he'll be back with us. He dropped. We're connecting. We're going Victoria, Texas, Western Australia, all points in between. That's what we do here on Baseball's Best Mate. Glad you're along on a Friday mornings to wrap this thing up. A couple things. First off, I want to answer the question that Matt had. And Matt said, who was going to foot the bill on the quarantine is what he was asking about. There's two answers to that question. Cam and I actually talked about this a little bit off the air, and just kind of in passing. But let me give you a couple scenarios. I think one thing they're hoping for, and this is the big picture thing anyway, and I think Amanda actually brought this up too. And all this plan, all these plans, or this big master plan is contingent, and Cam told us this from the very beginning tonight, or this morning when I taped the interview, whatever day, night it is. I don't even know what the heck I'm doing. But it all contingent on this whole thing opening up a bit. That's the deal. So assuming it opens up, and Paul's about to join us in just a moment. Here in just a second. Paulie, I tried again there, but I didn't get you. I think you're coming in now. Let's try it again. Let's see here. I hear you, so I'm going to try to get him in there. Partner, I can't see you, but I can hear you. How about that? So I got a screen. Actually, you know what? Let me put this on. This will be great because in the spirit of the end of Yellowstone for the season, I've got this for you on the screen. How about that? There you go. There's Paul and I in our best Western gear. And you see the microphone being shot out of the gun there. You like that? Do you see it? Yeah, there you go. That's us right there. Back to the matter at hand, though. If Paul can hear me now. You can hear me now? Okay. I can't see you, but I can hear you. First off, to Matt's question, again, the whole question is if this whole thing can go. All depends on the whole COVID situation. But it's my understanding that quarantine, if it's an MLB club, that would be part of their agreement to send players over. I don't believe the ABO will be on the foot for the bill. Part B of that, Matt, is this answer too. The hope is that by the time we get to November, December, that there'll be some kind of plan in place that will allow teams and groups of players to travel and perhaps not be quarantined or be to a lesser degree to train while quarantining. That's also a hope that possibly it's been done in other countries as well. So that's kind of a double answer for you. But again, all of this, partner, is contingent on everything being opened up, right? A couple questions quickly. Hannah actually makes a comment. ABO could be the best winter league in the world. Yes, there's challenges, but there's also a game-changing opportunity for many seasons ahead and for the baseball down under. I'm confident this will be the best season. Hannah, Paul and I say the same thing. We've said this now going back to 2012. We first met. There's an opportunity here to be the best league in the world in the winter. And this season, with all this coming on, some of these things you can see going forward could only help the game. I agree with you 100%. This is an opportunity, not a detriment. Good stuff there. Paul says, Paul Kelly says, for major international travel to happen, this won't require quarantine, particularly any type of travel bubble. Hopefully this is occurred by January. Yes, I think, and that was kind of my answer, Paul, a little bit to Matt's question, was that hopefully that's the case. That'll be, again, as of today, and Cam told us this, as of today, it ain't happening. Today, as we are the 20th of August. Now, what the 20th of October or November looks like, December, and what you got to remember, this is plan A. Plan B may require, and as he mentions it in the interview, there may be a hub somewhere else. There could be some changes. This is all open to be changed at some point. This is the way to go forward, right, partner? Yes. Yes, he does. Paul, get me in. Paul, get me in the country. Paul, get me in the country. Yeah. Adam Dodd would know this. Of course, he's the owner of the Sydney Blue Sox. Says that COVID, that pay would not be used in quarantine from MLB pay, but they could pay cash that is used to quarantine. Though, yeah, there's a little confusion there. I think the biggest answer to that question, Matt, though, was the hope is, like Paul just mentioned, we have a little more less restrictions there. Paul says coming from the high risk countries like USA. They may need to, but it's likely to be a country-by-country decision. Yes. Tom says we couldn't hear the audio from Paul. You guys aren't hearing Paul Morgan right now? That's odd. Okay. Let's see here. At the moment, as it stands right now, Paul, anyone coming from overseas has 100% quarantine, no exceptions. And then we've got Paul again says, actually that was Adam. Sorry about that, guys. 100% quarantine. By the way, WD-40, if you're watching, can you tell me if you heard Paul there? Because I don't have his video there, but again, I thought it was good stuff from the head man right there, and really good stuff. So all good, but I think I just lost Paul anyway. So anyway, questions, comments for you guys as well. Last couple of things here. No Paul audio. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what happened there. I don't know why we didn't get him. Interesting. So you guys just hearing me. Can't hear Paul. Okay, well, my apologies, guys. Well, basically what Paul was saying, again, I was listening to, sorry about that, guys. That's why we do these interactive things. Thumbs up and all that. Anyway. Partner, I lost you there, bud. But we can't hear him. So thank you guys for letting me know. Again, this whole thing, and again, it's exciting. I'm excited. This is an opportunity. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I'll tell you this. The American Association, the independent league in the States, had a choice to make 3 months ago. Go forward, be the bold one out there, or circle the wagons and go home. That gamble, that decision to go forward is reaping major benefits. So the only league they've had one COVID stoppage, one day. It was the first weekend of the season. They've effectively tested. They've effectively played baseball in a COVID environment with 6 teams. Now, not all 12 teams could play. One of them being the Kansas City T-Bones, who I spend my North American summers with. But 6 teams could play. And they've been able to pull it off using a bubble and no bubbles. And what's happened the entire time, well, you got to remember, what happens along this COVID world we're in, things will change along the way. Dylan Tice, a young man who's playing for the Milwaukee Milkmen, told me this in an interview opening weekend in the American Association, that they were told to be prepared for changes to happen almost on a weekly basis. I mentioned in the interview, early before the interview, that the American Association is going to a 7-game playoff series this year. What you're going to see happen for this to work, from a fan standpoint, we must have patience. We must have patience and know that what you just got today and yesterday, may or may not be the case come October 1 or November 1. It's all subject to change. And I went through this with the American Association before. I went through all of this. So I know how we went through 3 different changes. Things are going to change. There's going to be some changes, some additions, subtractions. That's going to happen. But the idea is you must have a plan in place to go forward with, and you will have to adjust on the fly. And the American Association has done that at every turn. The ABL will do the same thing. And you just got to do that. It's what we do. I mean, we're learning on the fly as we go. We've never been through this as a people. It's been 102 years ago, and we didn't have the internet back then. We didn't have social media back then. We didn't have TV back then. Heck, I don't think we had radio back then, did we? We had the old teletype. So it's the world we're in now. But you got to remember that it's going to probably change some before we get there. But the opportunity's there. And I'm telling you, the gamble the American Association took to play baseball has hit huge dividends, because in the state's MILB, they ain't playing. There's no minor league baseball being played, unfortunately. The independent leagues, there's a league going on in one ballpark in Sugar Land. There's a quasi league in the Houston area that's basically a pay-as-you-go league. And there's a couple of smaller leagues sort of on the fringes. The American Association, one of the 2 largest independent leagues in the States, went forward with a bold plan, and they're going to crown a champion in about 13 days, or it'll start crowning one in 13 days. And they pulled it off with one COVID loss, and they've had to make changes here and there. They expanded rosters here and there. They had to do some changes and add doubleheaders and things like that. And they had to do some things. But it's all turned out okay. And again, Plan A, because I'm telling you right now, I was on that conference call in March for Plan A. I was on holiday in March on Plan A, because we thought then we'd be gone for a couple of weeks. But just in case, this is what we're going to do come April. And this is what we're going to do come May. And the ABL, as you heard Cam, will do the very same thing. So positivity. It ain't perfect, folks. We all know this is not perfect. But the opportunity's there to be a better league in the end. And that's what I think that Cam really told us there. And I think that's where we are. Final call on questions and comments from you guys. Paul, I lost him there. But again, I want to give you guys, here's Paul and me right here. This is us and our best Yellowstone look right there. It's us from Yellowstone. There we are, the baseball's best mate. We are also baseball's best Yellowstones right there, as Yellowstone season 3 wrapped up over the week. And there we are. That's us right there, baseball's best mate. Matt says a 6-week sprint with, yes, that's exactly what happened in the American Association. And I use this several times in my talk with the Kansas City T-Bones. I do a show on Wednesday with the American Association for the T-Bones, and also been a couple of times on a couple of podcasts for the league. And I kept saying, why the expanded rosters, I'll get to that in a moment. One of the things that happened was the American Association learned that it's a lot more of a sprint this year as opposed to a long drawn-out affair. And so teams really stacked up early, knowing that all they really needed to do in a 60-game season was really have a solid 30 games. You're probably okay. And that's what's happened with both the teams, the 4 teams that are up in the 3 that are right in the hunt. There's 5 in the hunt, but the 3 that are really in the hunt have a really good, strong 30-game stretches. So a 6-week sprint, no doubt. Why expanded rosters? The question is being asked, Adam, why expanded rosters? Why extended rosters? The main reason for that, the American Association added expanded rosters. Their thinking was it'd be more double. They were concerned, like the big leagues were, that there'd be COVID outs instead of rain outs. COVID outs. You'd want to have, of course, now at the big leagues, the reason they've kept the expanded rosters, they had 30, 28, 26 now to 24. The reason they've got that is because of the doubleheaders. There are a lot of doubleheaders coming up in the big leagues, and it saves your pitching staff. Even though they're 7-inning doubleheaders, you're playing 14 innings as opposed to 9. More pitching staff, more pitching. That's the main reason they're doing it there. And also just a deeper pool of players. The COVID thing, same thing. Let's see here. Adding costs for shorter-term loss. Well, I asked Cam that too, Adam. And it sounded like to me that wasn't going to be the case. They weren't going to expand the rosters, although that's on the table, but I don't believe it's going to be. I think that it's what you're probably going to see. I would think is you'll have as your playing roster, and you'll have that reserve roster, and I can see very easily the reserve roster or your development roster being used home and away if needed. The league's been very good over the years, and I think this has been a plus of letting players in and out of the competition on a weekly basis because you have to. For the state playoffs, the state league competitions in each state, also for guys who work, regular jobs and can't maybe play on a Friday, you can only play Saturday, Sunday. They're going to be very flexible. I think you're going to see that. I mentioned that too to Cam as well, but very good point though, Adam. Yeah, adding costs for shorter term loss, and that's the thing. I asked Cam that. I don't know if you heard that, Adam. Yes, mentioned previously. No, Matt, you did. That's great. That's what you guys are here for. Appreciate you guys asking those questions. Teams, yeah, they're going to reserve rosters regardless. That's not going to change. You're right, and that's something I asked Cam as well. Unchanged there. We know our backup guy. You know your backup guys. The only thing, I feel for Adam, guys like Adam, because I worry for and of course Sydney's going to have some games there at home, but I worry for those owners that in case something was to happen, it's a financial clip to jump off of. And I can tell you right now, the T-Bones in Kansas City, we're not playing games, and when you're not putting folks in the stands to enjoy your product, hard to put money in the bank. So I feel for you guys, and I'm pulling for you guys. But yes, there are not a lot of changes. My only concern was, and I think, and again, the ABL has been very good over the years. They're not going to change the roster points, but bringing players in and out of the roster with the reserves, that's going to continue to happen. That's not going to be a big change right there. But last call and questions here on Baseball's Best Mate, talking baseball Australia. Coming up next week, on the show next week is, I look at my notes here, Tyler Anderson's going to join us. Tyler, you may know the name, you may not know the name. Tyler is one of the was a pitching coach of the Perth Heat last year. He's a great example of what a young man coming from Australia and going the college route can do, because there's two sides of the story of the college guy who goes the college route, gets drafted like a Robbie Glendening, and goes to the U.S. minor leagues. There's also the guy that goes the college route who doesn't get drafted but does parlay it either to an education or to a coaching gig. He talks about the whole pros and cons about that. We also talk, when I talk a little bit too with Tyler, he's agreed to he knows we're going to talk about this, but talking about the reason why Australians are such good pitchers. I mean, think of the Australian baseball stars. Dave Nielsen is a slugger. We all know that. He was a all-star type slugger, and he was big bat in that Brewer lineup card. But in general, the guys you think of as stars from Australia playing in the major leagues have all been arms. The Graham Lloyds, those type of guys. Peter Mullen, those kind of guys. And of course, we're talking about Liam Hendricks, Lewis Thorpe. Now, granted, Aaron Whitefield made the big leagues, and Luke Hughes there have been some offensive guys, but think about the guys over the years, they've been the arms. And we're going to talk about that. I have a theory about that. There's two. It's the footy and cricket theory I have. We're going to ask that to Tyler next week as well, and that'll be on the show same time, 8 a.m. in the West, 10 o'clock in the East. In North America, that's 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time. You adjust yourselves accordingly. Let's see anything else here as we wrap things up. Don't think I've got anything. In case you missed it off the top, I'm going to give you guys a quick overview of what you missed. This is off the top. This is the Australian Baseball League structure coming up, and there's just your two bubbles. You basically have two conferences, the Australian and the International. It's basically two leagues operating as one. Think of it as the American League and the National League operating as one league. It's what it is. It's Major League Baseball structure. You have a National League and American League. One has a DH, one doesn't. It's the old school pre-COVID structure. Games 24 each. You'll have 9 innings in the Australian Association or Australian Conference, 7 the International Conference, and that basically due, in case you missed it, to the television situation, which right now getting these games on broadcast is huge for the growth of our game in Australia. And then home and away for the Australian Conference, and then the International Conference will be the Adelaide, Brisbane will have a series each at home, and then they'll go to the bubble. The format, as you see at the bottom, let me pull that down for you guys. A format, play each team in a 4-game series at home, each team in a 4-game series on the road for the Australian Conference. In the 4-team model, play each opponent 8 times, and a 5-team model 6 times, because they may or may not add the 9th team, which is a possibility. It's still being worked out on the horizon. Then, of course, no interconference play, but you will definitely have the playoffs. There'll be playoffs. There'll be playoffs for sure, and you'll have at some point the Australian Baseball League finals, and that again, that's all going to be worked out down the road. A lot of this stuff, and again, what's the word for it? They're going to be on the fly, is what we call it over here. On the fly is what it's going to be like. All right, last call for questions, comments here, guys, as we get to the end of this thing, rounding third, heading for home. I'm so thankful for you guys. Thankful for you all joining us on Talking Baseball Australia Live. Paul and I began this show in 2012 on the radio in Perth, and we have carried it from the radio stage at Sport FM. We've gone from there to podcast, and now doing this whole social media live, and we're going to be expanding it. We're going to put this thing on Twitter. It's on YouTube Live right now. We're going to move it to our YouTube page as well. Also our website, which I'm working on doing all this. We got all kinds of stuff going on here on Baseball's Best Mate, but we really want you guys to join us, and a big part of what we're doing is you. You guys are the best. You're the best fans in the world, the fans of the Australian Baseball League. There's no more passionate group of baseball fans around. You guys care. You're into the game. You pull for the game. You pull for. You may be a Sydney fan, but you're still pulling for the league. You may be a Perth fan, but you're still pulling for the league and for the game. You may be upset when you don't win the Claxton Shield, but you're still pulling for the league, and I appreciate that. We do this show every Friday morning at 8 a.m. And, of course, you can also catch the replay on our Facebook page. We'll have Cam's interview up shortly as well. Baseball's Best Mate. We'll have all that for you. So we're constantly growing this thing, constantly moving. Let's see a last call here. Just a thought on the 14-day quarantine. Doesn't necessarily mean 14 days in a hotel like the AFL. Also allowed training in pairs during that period under strict protocol of social distancing. So, yes, quarantine might still be in place. There's a way to allow training. Yes. It's not a deal breaker, is it? No. As a matter of fact, Hannah, Cam and I actually talked about this just briefly in passing after the taping of the interview, and he did say that that's kind of the hope. He's been talking with the Australian government, the powers that be. That is definitely a hope that a very similar type quarantine can be in place for the players and staff as well. Very similar to that. So that's a very good point. And that's one thing he did mention. So very good stuff there from Hannah. Big thanks to you folks for watching us here. Again, we're back here next Friday. You can catch us on Twitter. Paul Morgan and myself both. A big thanks to my partner. Again, I lost you a moment ago. Paul, you're the man. Love you, brother. Can't wait to see you guys in Australia very soon. Thank you guys for taking the time to join us here. It's a crazy world we live in right now, right? Virtual hugs to all of you guys. It's what I keep telling my T-Bones faithful. Anybody that'll listen to this guy, let's be better tomorrow than we were today. It's a crazy world. We need lots of love. Let's love each other. Be kind. Let's be better today than we were yesterday. And let's be better baseball fans and better all around. We come out of this thing. We will come out of it. We will get back to some kind of something of normalcy. It may be a little different normal. We're going to get there. And when we do, let's be ready to be great. And let's have this league be ready to really rock and roll going forward. Okay, we'll see you guys next Friday. Same time, same place. Big thanks to Cam Vale for joining us. And, of course, my broadcast partner. Big thanks to you, the fan here of the Australian Baseball League, right here on Talking Baseball Australia Live. It's the point of the show I hate the most, but got to do it. It's the close. It's the close. But, hey, we'll always be next time. We'll see you next week on Talking Baseball Australia Live. Love you guys. See you next time.
Buy me some peanuts chance. I don't care if I ever get back for its root. Root, root for the Putney. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Let's get some runs!
What, Tom?
Get some runs!
Let's get some runs, boys.